in relation to British India, China, and Tsarist Russia. Also at this time, Tibet was fighting wars with the Gurkhas of Nepal due to trading and economic issues, resulting in a Tibet that required limited visitation from outsiders and help from Chinese armies. Because of their help in fighting for Tibet, the Manchu government tried to take claim to the recognition of Dalai Lamas by creating a process that involved pulling the name from an urn. This practice, however, was completely rejected. The 8th Dalai Lama, Gyatso Gyatsu, died in 1804 at the age of 47. Following the death of the 8th Dalai Lama, there was a succession of 4 Dalai Lamas who all died before reaching the age of 21. There is speculation that they were all assassinated. The 9th Dalai Lama, Toke Gyatsu, was born in 1806. He received only his novice vows before his death at the age of 9 in 1815. During this time, there were significant shifts of power, including the lessening influence of the Chinese within Tibet. The 10th Dalai Lama, Soultrim Gyatsu, was born in 1816 and was always said to be in poor health. He died in 1837 before assuming temporal power. He did, however, receive full ordination. The 11th Dalai Lama, Kenneth Gyatsu, was born in 1838, and he received his novice monk vows as well as full authority at an early age. China's influence over Tibet further weakened during this time. Kenneth Gyatsu died suddenly in 1856. Born in the same year, Tenle Gyatso, the 12th Dalai Lama, was the last of the Dalai Lamas to die at a young age. First recognized by Regent Rating, Tenle Gyatso took his novice monk vows and received full authority at the age of 18. The 12th Dalai Lama died at the age of 20 in 1875. The 13th Dalai Lama, Thubten Gyatso, was born in 1876. He became the second Dalai Lama to receive the title Great. Coming out of tumultuous times and the series of young deaths from the past 4 Dalai Lamas, Thubten Gyatso became known as a reformer and was especially praised for holding Tibet intact despite the political turmoil within Tibet and its surrounding neighbors. In 1904, British troops invaded Tibet, causing Thubten Gyatso to flee to Mongolia. The Chinese government tried to depose the 13th Dalai Lama with no success. Thubten Gyatso attempted to return to Tibet, but was forced to flee again, this time to India, because of the Chinese military presence. He was unable to return until 1911 when Imperial China fell to a rebellion, causing their military to retreat from Tibet. In 1913, Thubten Gyatso declared Tibet fully independent of China. Similar to the 5th Dalai Lama, the first to earn the Great Dalai Lama title, the 13th Dalai Lama had many accomplishments that greatly benefited Tibet. Thubten Gyatso helped create a more modern Tibet by implementing a postal system, paper currency, roads, Tibet's first power station, the Tibetan Medical Institution, the first English school, electricity, telephones, and the first motor car. Thubten Gyatso also improved the standards of study in monastic colleges, making it impossible for people to move up in the religious hierarchy, such as becoming an abbot, without being fully qualified. The 13th Dalai Lama also played a major role in revitalizing the institution of the Dalai Lama through his forceful character and political insight. Thubten Gyatso created a legislation system to help seize corruption amongst government officials, and he also created a national taxation system and a police force. The 13th Dalai Lama also tried to end Tibet's centuries of isolation by showing interest in world affairs. Before Thubten Gyatso's death in 1933, the 13th Dalai Lama predicted the loss of Tibetan independence to China, foreshadowing events to come. The 14th and current Dalai Lama is His Holiness Tenzin Gyatso, born on July 6, 1935, as Lama Dundrop. Tenzin Gyatso was recognized at the age of 2 after correctly identifying objects from the previous Dalai Lama that were mixed with similar ordinary objects. Tenzin Gyatso was enthroned in 1940, and His Holiness assumed political power in 1950, the same year in which China took over Tibet, causing him to flee the country. In 1959, after His Holiness had returned to Tibet, Lhasa was filled with the largest demonstration in Tibetan history, demanding the Chinese presence leave from independent Tibet. The turmoil was so great, however, that Chinese powers overtook Tibet, causing some 80,000 Tibetan refugees to follow His Holiness into exile. Tenzin Gyatso settled at Dharamsala in the Punjab, and the Chinese have since offered to lift the ban if he would refrain from calling for Tibet's independence. His Holiness has limited his affairs with the government, pushing only for self-government for internal affairs. In the Dalai Lama's own words, he explains that he is just a simple Buddhist monk, no more, no less. The 14th Dalai Lama says that 80% of his life is spent on spiritual activities and only 20% spent on Tibet as a whole. The main goals of His Holiness fall into what he says are his 3 commitments. First of all, he wishes to promote human values, including compassion, forgiveness, tolerance, contentment, and self-discipline. The second of his 3 commitments includes promoting religious harmony and understanding amongst religious traditions. The last of his 3 commitments are Tibetan issues, an obvious focus since he is the free spokesperson for the Tibetan people in their attempt at independence. His Holiness does state, however, that this last commitment will cease to exist once a solution is reached between the Tibetans and the Chinese. When His Holiness exits samsara, the question of whether the institution of the Dalai Lama remains or not depends entirely on the wishes of the Tibetan people. A draft constitution made in 1963 states that the Dalai Lama can be removed by a 2/3 majority vote. His Holiness feels that the institution has served its purpose, especially with the elected head of the administration, the Kolon Tripa. If the Dalai Lama were to die today, he feels that the Tibetans would choose to have another reincarnation, but also says that he would be born outside Tibet, away from the control of the Chinese authorities. Even if the Chinese did attempt to name their own Dalai Lama, as has happened in the past, Tibetan people would choose their own, following their own traditions. Through his life, His Holiness has traveled to approximately 46 nations. He embraces other cultures and different religions and believes there is no need for worrying of any sort. In 1989, Tenzin Gyatsu was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for fighting for Tibetan sovereignty while opposing the use of violence. His Holiness, although still living in exile today, remains optimistic that he will one day be able to return to Tibet. He believes that the turmoil conquered between Tibet and China will end up being of mutual benefit to each country and its people. All 14 Dalai Lamas throughout time have made an important impact on the Tibetan people and the Buddhist world. Despite varying degrees of influence, all of the Dalai Lamas have lived with compassion towards suffering and a mindset of peace, just as Avalokitesvara did. These Dalai Lamas have lived extraordinary lives and caused much positive change, with the most notable achievements coming from the great Dalai Lamas, the 5th and the 13th, and also His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, present within our lives today. While it is not known what is to come of the future of the Dalai Lamas, one thing is for sure. These individuals can be looked at as role models for Buddhists and non-Buddhists alike. The following closing is taken from the end of His Holiness's Noble Lecture upon receiving the Nobel Peace Prize on December 11th, 1989. In conclusion, let me share with you a short prayer which gives me great inspiration and determination. For as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain, until then may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world.